Hi there, in this section I want to show you a really great management theory, one of my favourite ones. It's super practical and will really help you to pick the right leadership style with your team. It's called Situational Leadership and we'll have a look and see how you can use it in action. So you've probably come across other leadership theories and models. So for example, one of the common ones that you might find is something like Tannenbaum and Schmidt's management continuum. So this talks about different styles of leadership, going from a very directive style of telling people exactly what to do and how to do it, up to where you delegate and you empower them as well. So different levels of managerial authority and different levels of freedom. And it's great and it's really useful to understand what each of those different styles are and how to use them. But it doesn't really tell you when to use them and why you should use different styles in different ways. Some people think that you should always be delegating and empowering. You should never be the directive telling manager. Well, that's not really true. And I want to explain why, looking at situational leadership and why I think it's one of the best theories out there. So if you think about leadership, how do you choose which style you're going to use? Well, it really depends on the person and on the situation. So situational leadership, it's broken down into these 4 different boxes. And we've got 2 different axes. We've got motivation here up on the side, and we've got competence along there at the bottom. So motivation, that's their intrinsic desire and will to do the job. And competence is how good are they at that particular task or that particular role. And so these are a bit of a sliding scale, but we're going to broadly put people into 4 different boxes. So let's have a look at them and see why people might be in these boxes and how you should then be leading them. So we're going to start up here in the top right hand corner. So these are people who are competent and they are motivated. So with these people, these are really going to be your star performers. Now it would be nice if everybody was up here, wouldn't it? It'd be great if you could delegate and people would get on with the work. You can check in now and again, see how progress is developing, but you don't have to spend a lot of time with these people. So these people, you are going to be using a delegating style. So these are your high performers. It would be great if everybody was up here, but not everybody's going to be up here. And as we'll see in a bit, you're not going to be up here for every single part of your job. So you're going to be delegating them. You can also, if they're very good and very motivated, you can also empower them. So empowerment is where you're then having less and less and less checking and control over them, and you're just trusting them and they're able to do the job. So it'd be great if we could move everybody up towards that top corner, but we can't have everybody up there all the time. So let's have a look at these boxes and see why people are in these boxes, and also how can we move them up in this direction. So let's have a look at this box in the top left hand corner. So these are people who are motivated, but they are not yet competent. So why might we find people in this box? Well, this has to be people who are new to their role. So people who are willing to learn, they want to learn, but they're not yet competent. So these usually people who are brand new to a company, they've just joined or they've just been promoted. And these people, they're not yet competent in their role. They might need a lot of training. They might need to be told exactly what to do, but they don't yet know. So with these people, you're not going to delegate to them because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. If you delegated, it would be a disaster. So with these people, you do need to use a tell style. You need to give them training. You need to provide them with information, and you do need to use that directive style of leadership. So these aren't necessarily people who are in very junior roles. So this could be somebody who is very experienced in their field, maybe a doctor joining a new hospital, for example. But if they're new to that hospital, they're not going to know where everything is or who to speak to or what all the different processes and procedures are. They're going to need to just give them that information. So don't just delegate to somebody who's new. You have to tell them this information. You have to give them the training. And ideally what will happen is if you do that right, then people will then move across into this delegating box. Now that's an ideal situation. Doesn't always happen, but if you do the training in the right way give them that support, keep their motivation high, then they can move across into the delegating box. So being in this box isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a very natural and normal thing, but if you don't do it correctly, they might then lose motivation. So we want to keep that motivation high, but also give them the training to increase their competence, move them up here. What about this box down here in the bottom right corner? So these are people who are competent, but they're not motivated. So why might people end up down here? Well, these are for a couple of reasons, I think. First of all, these could be people who have simply been in their job for too long and they're bored. It could also be that these people have been badly managed. So they haven't been given responsibilities, they haven't been given any opportunities to learn new skills, and they just got bored and they've drifted from this box down into this box down here. So what do we need to do with these people in order to help motivate them? Well, we don't need to give them a lot of training because they've already got the skills, and there's a real waste of potential if we've got people down here. So what do we need to do with them? Well, what I think is the best strategy is you want to involve them. You want to ask their opinions, get their ideas, share information with them, make them feel that they're really part of the team and that you really value what they're saying. Make them feel important as well. And also, another really often overlooked thing is you need to thank them. So thanks and praise is something that should be done by every manager to everybody on your team at least once a week. And if you're not, make sure you start doing that. But thanking is so important as well, just to make them feel appreciated and valued and important. And then if you do that well, you can then start to move them back upwards towards this delegating box. So make sure that with these people, they feel important, they feel valued, that the skills and the knowledge that they've got is really important to you. So with these people, motivating them is all going to be about getting information out. They've got the information, they've got the skills, they don't need training, they just need support, they need motivating, and they need to feel important. And that's how you can raise them from here up into this box up here. And the final box that we've got on this diagram are people who are not motivated and they are not competent. And when I ask this question sometimes about what should we do with these people, now sometimes some people say, well, you should just get rid of them because they're not motivated, they're not competent, just get rid of them. And first of all, I don't think that's a good approach. I think everybody deserves a chance to improve and to learn and to grow. So let's first of all think about why we've got people down here in the first place. And I think, first of all, people really end up down here, first of all, if they're not trained. So if you've got these new people up here, if they're not giving the training that they need and they aren't able to improve their competence, of course, over time, their motivation is going to drop. You're not going to be able to stay in a job or in a role for very long if you're not very good at it. If you're making mistakes, you don't really know what to do, your motivation is going to drop really quickly. So if they're not giving the training up here, they're going to drop down to this box down here. And the other reason I think why people could be in this box is that they're simply in the wrong job. That sometimes happens, and in that case you might need to then explore them moving to a slightly different role. But in either of these cases, this is management's responsibility. Management needs to sort this out. So with these people, how do we approach this? Because we've got two problems. First of all, they're not motivated and they're not competent. So with these people, really, we need to be taking a more of a coaching approach with them. So coaching is different from training. So training is just providing information, whereas coaching is much more of a relationship. It's much more diving into not just how they're doing the job, but their motivation as well. So really coaching to them, explaining things to them, and really also making them, again, similar to these people, feel valued. And also with these people, make sure that you give them plenty of praise. So when you're giving them feedback, don't just say the areas that they need to improve. Give them feedback on what they are doing really well, because that's how you're going to really build their motivation and build their confidence. So with these people, if you coach them, what you find will happen is actually you can improve both their motivation and their competence at the same time. And what you find happens is that if they're in this box, if you give them a bit of coaching, their competence will improve a little bit. And when their competence improves, then their motivation improves. And then their competence improves. And gradually over time, through coaching, you can build a stairway from this box down here up to the delegating box by giving them some coaching, giving them praise, giving them a bit more information, giving them praise, builds their confidence and their competence at the same time. Now, coaching does take a lot of effort on both you and your team members' part. It does take a lot of investment, and you have to be willing to do that, and they have to be willing to do that as well. If they're not willing to do that, if they're not very good at their job, if they're not motivated, but they're not willing to engage in the process of coaching and improvement, then maybe they do need to look at being moved into a different role. But I would give everybody a chance, and really most people will engage with the process, and a lot of the time it will work for you really, really well. So that is situational leadership, the 4 different boxes, and some of my ideas about how you can deal with people who are in these different boxes. Now, the really, really important thing about this model, and something that isn't often talked about enough with it, is that everybody is in all 4 boxes for something. You will have people on your team who are really great at certain areas of their role. You can delegate to them, you can empower to them, and they're motivated to do it, and it's all great. We've all got parts of our job that we are good at, but we don't really like doing. We've got no motivation for doing them. Or we've got parts that maybe we're learning for the first time, but we don't yet know how to do them, but we're keen to learn. And hopefully, but you won't have much, but you might have something that you're not very good at, but you also have zero interest in improving. So the important message from situational leadership is think about your people. Where are they? But also think about it not just in terms of the whole person, but in terms of every individual part of their role. Because somebody might be in the delegate box for one part, but in other parts of their job, they might need coaching or training, or you might need to involve them. So really think about that. And the biggest mistake that I see people making is having people who are up here in this box for delegation, and they're great and they're star performers, giving them some new responsibility or new role. So maybe they're being promoted to become a manager, or maybe they're put in charge of a project. But the problem then is that they are still then delegated to. Now, they might be up in this box for their day job as an accountant, let's say, but if you make them a manager, they are not yet competent at being a manager. And they will need to be trained, they will need to be coached in order to move them into this box for being a manager as well. And if you have somebody who is given new responsibilities like managing a project, they aren't good at project management, but they've also got zero interest in learning project management. If you try and delegate to them, it's going to be a disaster, because for that part of their job, they are down here in this box, and you would then really need to coach them, explain things to them in order to motivate them and also build their competence in project management, so you can then delegate to them in that as well. So make sure that you really think about where are different team members in this diagram, where are they for different roles and responsibilities, and if you're giving them new responsibilities, please make sure that you use the correct leadership style for where they are on the diagram. Now, people move through these boxes over time, and we've talked a bit about that already. And in the sort of the published versions of the model, you'll see this pattern generally said as the way that people move through situational leadership. And I don't think it's the only way of doing it. And I'll explain why in just a second. So in the model, it says that you'll come in to a role, like we've said, where you're motivated, but you're not yet competent. And as you start to learn, your motivation drops and you move down into this box down here where you need coaching. Then gradually your competence increases, and when your competence increases, then you'll increase your motivation, and eventually you'll end up in the box in the top right. And you sort of go through this big dip of despair where you're losing motivation as you're trying to learn it. But as we've talked about, I don't think that's necessarily the case. If you are up in this top left box, if you are given the right coaching, if you're given the right training, you can move across into this box without going through this big horrible dip in the middle. I don't think that has to happen, but in a lot of the models that is the case, because I think there are different ways of moving through here. Now, one that I have personally experienced, that I know other people have experienced, is where you start off in this box up here in the top right, and you are given good training and you are quickly able to move over into this box over here where you're delegated to. Now, over time, you become bored and your motivation then drops and you end up down in this box in the bottom right. And then eventually either you're promoted or you get a new job, and then you end up back at the beginning, and you sort of go around in this kind of cycle like this banana shape, banana of boredom, moving around the boxes in a slightly different manner. So I think that the model is good, but there are more than one way of moving around in the different boxes. So I think it's a really good model. So really think about those different leadership styles. How can I use them with different people in my team? Where are they for different parts of their role? So just to briefly sum up this quick look through situational leadership. So it's all about using the right style for the right person based on them and the situation, whether it's a new role or just some new responsibilities. Just because somebody is in that delegating box for part of their role doesn't mean they're going to be in the delegating box for everything. If you give them some new responsibilities, they might need to be trained. They might need to have that directive style of leadership. So don't just assume that because somebody's a good performer, a safe pair of hands, that they're going to be the same way for everything that you give them. We're all in 4 boxes for some part of our role and some parts of our lives. Using the wrong leadership style can lead to disaster. It can lead to drops in motivation, work not being done, and just generally bad news all around. So monitor their engagement and their competence in different ways, and think about how you can help them and what styles you'll use with them for all of those different aspects of their role. And really please make sure that you praise your team, that you give them thanks at least once a week, make them feel valued to help keep that motivation high, keep confidence high, and then you'll hopefully have everybody up in that top right box as star performers.